Everybody says that this election between Trump and Harris is going to be close. And they may well be right. But I'm envisioning that there a genuine possibility that it won't be close, that we may be heading toward a blowout election, that there is that potentiality. Hi, I'm Andy Schmuckler. Uh, I think about the forces at work in the human world, and lately something has happened when instantaneously, something beyond anything anybody I've seen anticipated at all. The spiritual transformation, the emotional transformation, the quickening of hope and uh, purposefulness in the democratic world almost immediately when Biden withdrew and designated his preference for Kamala Harris. Even before Kamala Harris showed that she's got more than I, for example, thought she had going for her as a champion of the pro-democracy forces against the fascistic Trump and Trumpism. It was there in the Democratic body politic to create something that we did not anticipate. Within hours, there was a flood of passion, money, volunteering, voter registration. We should take that as a clue that there's stuff going on in America in this era of Trump that goes beyond what we see on the surface. I'm guessing that the rest of the body politic that hasn't jumped up on the Kamala bandwagon also has something that could be conducive to what the physicists call a phase shift, like when water turns to ice, or from liquid to gas, or whatever, a phase shift, like happened in the democratic world, in a complete transformation of there being light and power where there had been only dread and darkness and foreboding and a sense of powerlessness. That was a phase shift. And what about the rest of the American body politic? Are we to think that this extraordinary era is one in which only the Democrats were in some kind of a condition that might be catalyzed into something else? I suspect it's more systemic than that, in different forms in different parts of the body politic. I just posted into this weekend's newspapers in this Shenandoah Valley and in Lynchburg, where I ran for Congress. I have a weekly op-ed. I just published something which is about the desire for a dictator and how it can be countered. And one of the facts that I adduce from some study or other that's been done is that 32% of Americans actually want a strongman authoritarian leader, some kind of a leader who is not answerable to any kind of check or balance, which pretty well describes a dictatorship. 32%. I do wonder, what was it back in what I consider normal times, like up through the Clinton administration, say, or at least the first Bush administration. What percentage would have wanted a dictatorship? And we had the American Nazi Party, and I suppose John Birch might have fit into that. I don't really recall exactly what they said, but I think 32% is an increase. That the force on the right has successfully discredited democracy and successfully sold fascism enough that it's increased that 32%. But 32%, that's not enough to explain how we got to where we seemed to be before Biden cashed in his chips in that wonderful move that he finally made. You know, the people praise Biden, and I'm happy for them too, because that's good to do. But as a truth teller, I got to tell you, what I saw in those 3 weeks was not particularly to Biden's credit. I like to think that if I had been in Biden's situation, I would have simply read the handwriting on the wall and recognized that the judgment of the world, you could see it in all kinds of things in the polls and in the futures market, was that he was weakening the chance of winning a must-win election, but it took him a while. But okay, he eventually did it. And in fact, that may have been the best thing, because we went through so much terror that we were stuck in this with a losing hand, that helped set the framework for us to have that phase shift into this powerful thing that's arisen behind Kamala. Partly because of what Kamala is doing with that position, which has greatly impressed me, really greatly impressed me. But it was already ready to go before anybody knew any more about Kamala than we did, the day before Biden passed the torch, which isn't all that much. State of mind in liberal democratic America. What about the rest of we got 32% that want a strongman dictator. Okay. But how do we get to the point where the guy who's threatening to overturn American democracy and turn it into a more fascistic state, who's done all that he's done, that we've all witnessed right in front of our eyes? I mean, what he's shown us in any other time, almost on a daily basis, was unthinkable in an American president long before. But then by 2015, it was the Republican base that was willing to make an unthinkable choice, that they could see somebody like Trump, who was just the opposite of everything that Americans would have always said a president should be, as in terms of his character. I mean, he's a bully, he's a liar, he's really the wrong guy. But already by that time, something had happened in the Republican base that enabled him to become the Republican nominee and then president of the United States, and then completely take over the party, dominating that whole Republican world in a way that we have never seen any leader dominate a political party. I mean, somebody like Liz Cheney gets driven out of the party. That is a kind of control. I don't know that FDR wouldn't have tried it, but even FDR wouldn't have dealt with dissent the way Trump did, to completely intimidate the Republican Party, so that by the end of 2017, they were basically his instruments, and he was safe to do whatever he damn pleased, and they would acquit him if he got impeached, which he did twice, and they did twice. And then that Republican base is all for it. All of that is unthinkable in the normal American context. So something has also happened to move that, let's say 15% that isn't in the 32% that want a dictator, they're willing to say so, but who are telling pollsters they'd vote for Trump, and which made it look like the futures market said almost at the peak, almost a 2/3 chance that he was going to be elected president, even after we'd seen that he'd fomented an insurrection and he lies all the time. I mean, nothing's really hidden here. And there's something that's happened in the minds of a lot of people. If the Democrats were filled with dread, with a Republic, that 15% that don't say they want a dictator are willing to tell pollsters they're going to vote for a guy that basically has told us that he's lawless, he's going to be lawless, he's gotten the Supreme Court to give him a free out of, you can't be held accountable ticket, and all the rest of it. And yet they're telling, that is extraordinary. And I live here in the Shenandoah Valley, and one of the things I have that liberal commentators don't generally is I have some kind of a knowledge of the conservative America, rural Virginia, Shenandoah Valley that I live in, because I did talk radio with these conservatives about a lot of stuff for a decade. And I know that there are a lot of good people out there who somehow are in a state of mind which allows them to give fervent support, or at least loyal support, to something which is right in front of our eyes. What they, according to the values that they expressed back in the 90s when I was on the radio, they would have called evil. So you've got something going on where in the political realm, these good people are in a state of consciousness which is at tension with something which I can testify was a real part of themselves that they held to be of crucial importance. Their character, their commitment to Christian values, their patriotic revering of the Constitution, their belief in the importance of good character. And yet, here they are, voting for something which has shown right out front that they're the opposite of all those. That tension means that it's like a rubber band. Maybe there's a way to get all that to snap. Maybe at least, the goal, I think, should be, for starters, to get everybody who's not in that 32% to reject fascism. Why not? If their pro-democracy feelings are strong enough that they're not willing to tell the pollster, yeah, they'd like to have no check on the power of the strong man to do whatever he sees fit. We've got a bunch of people out there who do believe in the American way, even if they betrayed it by supporting something that would overturn our constitutional order. It's like a rubber band that's stretched with a kind of tension. And if the democratic world can suddenly go from dread and despair to hope and energy, is there a chance that there are other phase shifts that can happen here in America? And I think the answer is yes. I think that Kamala Harris is the first Democrat to show a real capacity to get toe-to-toe with the fascistic power and continually score. Put herself within punching distance, throw punches and land them. That's what she's doing. Say it to my face. We're not going back. Talking scornfully to Donald. And you can believe me when I say, I know his type. There is promise in this. There's a rubber band that's stretched so that at this present moment, you've got a lot of good people giving their support to, I'll just call it evil. That tension. And then we've got Kamala Harris taking a swipe at Donald Trump that scores. And one of the things that she's doing is she's using scorn to make him smaller, more contemptible than the way he looks to the people who are saying they might vote for him. There is a real truth to this. Trump is not a strong person. For example, he can't deal with reality. He lost an election. He apparently couldn't cope with that. Kamala Harris says, America deserves a president who doesn't, fly off the handle when asked questions on the basis of facts. She's belittling him appropriately. And the fact that she bests him in these exchanges so far, I haven't been real clear about what Trump did about is she black or not. I've read things which say it did exactly what he wanted it to do, get him attention and show he'll stand up to the blacks, to his base. But I think the balance of opinion is that he's flailing. He already doesn't know how to deal with somebody who jabs and jabs with her scorn and her deft scalpel work on exposing him. So I believe that here's where the rubber band comes from. There's a part of these good people. They may not be in the 32%, or they may be in the 32%. There are good people in the 32% too. There's a part of them that is kind of broken, and that really only cares about strength and power. In my sense of how this worked culturally, I think that a lot of people in conservative American have a degree of trauma in being brought up in a conservative fashion, where they have been treated in a way because of the power imbalance that they have been, driven into a form of domestication that doesn't feel very free. And it feels like because I was weak, I got made into less than I wanted to be and other than I wanted to be. I had to walk the straight and narrow, and it was imposed upon me in a way that didn't really allow me to be free to find my own path. I mean, I'm a liberal, and I brought up my kids. I don't think any of them would have any sense that the power imbalance was injurious, and therefore they really want power. I don't think that's there. And I don't think it's there in most families in liberal America. We tend to make some mistakes in the other direction of being too unwilling to impose an authority. But the authoritarian personality, which is the extreme version of what's on the right, has been studied, and it's been shown that there's a degree of familial tyranny, different degrees of familial tyranny, sufficient that a part of people that doesn't get integrated into walking the straight and narrow, a part of them is really interested in having the power to feel that they don't have to suffer from the consequences of weakness like they did. And so if there's a strong man, if there's somebody like Donald Trump that goes toe-to-toe with little Marco and low energy Jeb and Lion Ted Cruz and whatever he called Hillary and sleepy Joe Biden. I mean, whatever it takes to show that he's the dominant one. He insists on dominating, so that when he debated Hillary Clinton, he hovered over her. When it was her turn to be speaking, he was distracting attention and basically dominating her from above. And she said in her memoir, "I wish I had said to him, 'Back off, you creep,'" but she didn't. And that's what is new in this situation with Kamala Harris as being the liberal champion. Biden didn't cut Trump down to size. Obama didn't cut Trump down to size, et cetera, et cetera. So if what has seduced these good people on the right into supporting somebody like Trump is this hankering for power for its own sake. And that, by the way, is what you can see about the whole Trump party, is it really has no agenda other than struggling to get more and more power. Power is the currency of the good, and it grows out of that trauma of childhood experience of the costs of weakness. The Athenians have a statement about how the world works. The strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must. And if your upbringing has taught you at the level of a deep wound, however big or small, how true that is, because that's what it was in your family. I could tell you stories about how the school authorities overly domesticate the young people going through these schools, like the way they regulate people's behavior at the drinking fountain. You know, real assertion of authority, whereas none is needed. That's the problem with the right-wing culture. The left-wing culture has its problems of chaos. But the right-wing culture's pattern is the strong do what they can. And if that's the way the world's going to be, there are a lot of people who can be seduced into thinking, I want to be with the strong. Now, I have been trying as an op-ed writer for, I guess it's more than 10 years now. 11 years I've been weekly in newspapers in this part of Trumpy, rural Virginia. And I keep on trying to call these people back to the better angels of their nature. I remind them of the things that were beautiful about them back when they talked about the values that they held sacred. And it's exposed that they're supporting the opposite. I keep on trying to do that. I don't know if that helps to erode it or not. I just do what I know how to do. But I see that Kamala Harris maybe has something more powerful to do, or at least complementary, rather than showing the truth, which I think is important. I think it's important. I hope it's important. But she's also altering the perception of Donald Trump. She's making him small. She's mocking him. She's treating him as the object of her scorn and some contempt. I know his type. And she's, it has come to my mind some kind of emperor's new clothes moment. Now, there are complications in Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale about why is it that people admired the emperor's new clothes when it turns out they could see that he was naked. How much was it that they weren't willing to express what they saw? how much is it that they simply didn't see what was there to see? And they had been seduced by propaganda to think that he was wearing these fine clothes. Well, if in America there is this set of tensions, many tensions, like is political violence is okay? Okay. There are these set of tensions. And one of them is between these good people and the way they're supporting evil. And if they've been seduced into supporting evil because there's a part of them that's broken that makes them really happy to identify with a strong figure who goes after the people that they feel threatened by and makes them feel powerful by the way he can dominate them and victimize them, then if you can make him look less strong, you can peel away some of those who maybe won't get peeled away by being reminded of the values they used to say they held sacred, the better angels of their nature. Maybe the best way to do, or it could be complementary. What Kamala Harris is doing, and if she can continue the toe-to-toe and scoring, he doesn't score off of her. I mean, that is part of what's being battled now, is who's going to define her. I'm betting on her ability to define her. And she is defining him in terms which could lead to yet another phase shift. As the democratic world has become, yes, we're going to remain in a democracy and we are going to reject what Trump and what he represents. That by diminishing him with scorn, eroding that false image of the emperor with all these fine clothes. He's a little person. He's when, what's his name, John Kelly, his chief of staff, who had been head of the, appointed by Trump to be head of Homeland Security, was brought in to be chief of staff, was a general, I guess, a respectable record in the United States Army, and was the president's chief of staff. And he says of Trump, he's the most damaged human being I've ever seen. That's the guy that 2 weeks ago, the polls were saying the American people might elect to be president. The guy that tried to overturn the constitutional order, a whole list of things. A fascist dictator. Even in the first term, there are all kinds of signs of his disregard for what a president has taken an oath to regard. She has the means to expose Trump. And if we can get down to the 32%, that's a blowout. I mean, that is a blowout bigger than any previous blowout. 1936, South Landon, FDR, a bigger blowout than that. In 1984, Ronald Reagan, or 52, or 72, Dick Nixon and McGovern, George McGovern. Those were blowouts. But if you can get down to the 32%, if there's some kind of phase shift, a lot of people might move from one state to the other state. And I can envision Kamala Harris accomplishing that if she can keep up the quality of play that she's done so far. Her messages have been really finely tuned. What she said in response to the racist stuff that Trump put out with the black journalists was extraordinarily well chosen. She avoided the trap of making race a prominent issue, and she took it right to the problems of divisiveness and disrespect, and America deserves better. It deserves a president who And then she says stuff about what she used that moment not to fall into the trap that Trump had set by saying, let's get this black woman to talk about how black she is. So she has all that working against her. We don't particularly want America to see her as a black. We want her to see as a highly capable, brilliant, experienced, veteran of 4 major political positions and highly qualified to be president, offering a better vision and able to prosecute something which threatens American democracy. I think we could get a blowout. Now, I thought that before because I thought that only a third of Americans really would want what Trump represents if they understood what it represents. And this is back in January and in December, I think maybe, I envisioned a whole lot of things happening, including the trials that the Supreme Court helped Donald Trump avoid before the election. I just assumed there would be things happening that, including that the Democratic messaging would be more powerful in terms of getting all but that 32% to see the ugly choice that Trump represents and to reject it. But not only did we not get the trials I thought we were going to get, assumed that we were going to get, but the Democratic messaging was not so powerful. I mean, here we are engaged in an election like no other in American history because the survival of the Constitution and the rule of law is really what the election's about. It's an election of democracy versus fascism. We've never had an election that was clearly that, and this one is. I just thought that the Democrats would be able to paint the picture of what the American people's choices are, such that it quickens in that part of America that didn't already upsurge for Kamala, because there are 2/3 of us, roughly speaking. I believe there are 2/3 of us who have within us some kind of powerful commitment to certain values, our Constitution, the basic democratic institutions of embodying our basic values of all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, and that the government derives its just powers from the consent of the governed. You don't disenfranchise people. These are the American ways, and I think that the passion for that is latent in 2/3 of the people. But I think Kamala Harris can both summon people from that place to envision the democratic order we need to have, where this government is the instrument that gets good things to happen for the American people. And at the same time, to prosecute the case and diminish the seductive strong man to the weak man that he is, worthy not of the ability to draw with charisma good people into the service of evil. Not powerful, not like Mussolini on the balcony, posing with a strength that people want to see in their leader. Sometimes they're even willing to make gods of them because they feel vulnerable. The vulnerability that they grew up with is a continual threat in that emotional structure. So the strong man can seduce them. Identify with me, make a god out of me, and watch me smite your enemies. and you will not feel vulnerable. You think about the crowds in Nuremberg, in their uniforms and with their Hitler salutes and yelling Sieg Heil and all that stuff that Lily Wittgenstein filmed for The Triumph of the Will, an amazing documentary. All these people are identifying with this one force. It is the fist of fascism. But if that little man behind the curtain is no great Oz, he's just this contemptible, highly damaged person that John Kelly, the general, the basically good and capable man, said was the most damaged human being he'd ever seen. I think we should at least go for those 2/3. And we should be alerted to the fact that we don't really know what's been going on in America during this Trump era. We see on the Democratic side that there was stuff going on that made for a phase shift. Trump has made this into a very different country where very different things are at stake. Very different things are allowed to happen at the center stage of our power system than ever were before. I remember when it was a big deal when Dwight Eisenhower was found telling one lie about the U-2 flight over the Soviet Union. I believe it was a lie that the President of the United States should tell for national security reasons, if I remember correctly. This is 1960. But oh my God, Dwight Eisenhower lied to us. Here we got a guy who lied to us over 30,000 times during the first term, and the American people are going to give him another term in office? Weird stuff going on. The Democrats have shown that there's a capacity for wage shifts out of all that weird stuff. Let's go for some more. Let's make this election a blowout. Thank you very much. And if you're interested in seeing how I understand the American crisis and how I understand the challenges that we face as the civilization creating species on this planet, I've got that book about the problem of power and social evolution. I guess we've been talking about the problem of power and social evolution. You got family structures feeding fascistic political, and the fascistic political force feeds you the tyrannical family structure too. You can find that in For Your Own Good by what's her name, Alice Miller, about the groundwork for Nazism that was laid by the German way of bringing up children. Everything gets connected, and there's an integrated vision to be had. Please follow my videos if you want to get that in a kind of bit by bit way. But if you want to see it laid out systematically, that's been my life's work, and I lay it out rather fully in a variety of ways on my website, which is betterhumanstory.org. This battle we're engaged in America is our current crisis in a saga that's as old as the rise of civilization. And if you're interested in seeing how that's true, I hope you'll check it out on my website. Also, what I also say is true, that any creature on any planet, anywhere in the cosmos, that steps onto the path of civilization, with civilization defined as extricating itself from the niche in which it evolved biologically, by creating its own new way of life, will, regardless of its own nature, inevitably be swept up in a social evolutionary process that compels that creature's civilization to develop in ways that it didn't choose, it wouldn't have chosen, but it can't avoid, because that step unleashes a systemic force in the form of a selective process. Okay, if you want to see it. And then in that integrated vision, you can also see that what we've just been talking about about child rearing and the strongman government and the interplay of passions in a society that's gone out of whack in a serious way. That there are a lot of dimensions to how the human world works that feed into each other. And I've spent my life trying to show, first of all, that there is a major, coherent, destructive force that the rise of civilization inevitably unleashes. And then to show how that works, how that cause and effect works as the brokenness moves through the human world over the generations and the centuries and the millennia, and eventually coming up with things like what we confront right here, right now. I mean, many countries come up against moments of this kind. This is sort of extraordinary in the American context. We have a moment in which the interplay of forces has led to the possibility that seemed unthinkable in the America I grew up in, that a force of fascism might actually take over the country. And there's a lot to be said about how that happened, that it got so powerful. I think it could have been killed in the cradle. And my last 30 years has been, especially the last 20 years, has been an attempt to get it to be killed before it got to be this much of a threat. But Kamala Harris represents what I've been saying we need to do, which is to press the battle. If she can continue to press the battle the way she does, to punch and counterpunch with as much effectiveness as she does, she is eager to score. Now, did you ever feel that Obama was eager to score in the way that a boxer scores when he throws a punch? Or Biden? These are two unusually decent guys. But there's nothing indecent about what Kamala's doing. I think she represents a virtue that liberal America has been needing, which is the virtue of being ready to fight and to score off of the opponent. And she's doing that every time she makes Trump look smaller. Thanks again.